what can people do right now if maybe they're on summer vacation, or maybe they have a schedule change and they're spending more time with their dog than they expect to typically spend? So how can they structure that in a way that actually prevents separation anxiety?
Yeah, so the first thing is recognizing at what point of their home alone time. Some people, they can walk out the door and the dog's fine for half an hour before they see a reaction. But some dogs start reacting at the 5 minute mark or the 1 minute mark or the 5 second mark. And some dogs, you can't even walk outside the door before, they see a reaction. So if someone is on holidays and they are spending more time with their pet, the best thing to do is still try to do some absences, but to do it at the level that the dog can cope with. So we never push the dog to the point where they are going to have a breakdown, have a meltdown. I think one of the big things that dog caregivers get wrong when they try to do this training is they wait to see the reaction before they return to the home. So even if they're home, like on holidays, try to get outside the door for a little while, but don't push the dog too hard to the point where it starts to go over threshold, because every time it goes over threshold, it basically confirms to the dog that they should be scared. And then the next time mum tries to go out the door, they react even more. So the point is to keep the dog under what level they can cope. And again, that's going to be different for every dog. We don't know. It's going to be specific to your dog. So as I said, some dogs, you can't even get outside the door before you see reaction, and some dogs you've got a bit more of a window to get out.
Right. Now, of course, we're not going to go into the steps of working through this because that's going to be very individualized and we can't give that type of advice in one episode. But do you have any tips for leaving dogs home? So what can they do when dogs are left home in order to help them, whether or not they do have separation anxiety? Even a dog that doesn't have separation anxiety, do you have any favorite techniques for keeping them entertained or content when they're left home?
So I definitely think that there's two things when it comes to separation anxiety that maybe are a little bit overlooked, and because they seem so obvious, but I think a lot of people maybe don't take them as into consideration as much as they should, and they are exercise and enrichment. It seems quite, I don't know, maybe people don't really understand how important they are. So a dog that has had age-appropriate exercise, of course, it's got to be age-appropriate, and the right type of exercise, and that doesn't mean getting onto a skateboard and going at 40 miles an hour. But it needs to be sort of voluntary exercise. So it doesn't have to be that you're going for a jog or a bike ride or anything like that. It could just be that the dog has enough exercise. Exercise is really good because if you think about it, if a person is suffering from, e.g., depression or anxiety, what's the first thing the doctor says? Get outside, get some fresh air, get some exercise. So it's really good for their mental health. And enrichment is equally important because it boosts the dog's confidence, and that's going to help home alone time. It boosts the dog's optimism as well. And obviously it makes them tired mentally. So when it comes to the time that you need to walk out the door, if the dog has had ample exercise and ample enrichment, they're going to be much more ready to rest, especially if they, maybe they might be this is particularly important for teenage dogs who've got a lot of energy. They don't know what to do with it often, and they might be the ones that dig holes in the walls. But that sort of thing will help them settle more when you walk out the door. It's quite valuable, I think, to help those dogs. Teenage dogs in particular can be problematic, let's say, because they get bored a lot more easily. They're much more ready to go. And adding in the exercise and enrichment is really, really important. The other thing is people that do have dogs with separation anxiety. So those dogs, what we ask for the guardians to do is to manage their absences. So what that means is don't leave the dog alone until it's to the point that it can cope with home alone time. So, because what happens is each time that dog goes over threshold, as I said before, it makes them think, oh, I don't like this. I don't want to be by myself. And that is why one of the myths surrounding separation anxiety is let the dog bark it out. And every single one of my clients that comes to me, I'll say, oh, what have you tried in the past? And they all say, oh, well, the advice was let them bark it out. And I said, how did that work for you? And they said it made it worse. So there's things like that, you know, that would be one thing I would suggest not to do. Don't let them bark it out, because it will get worse, because they're faced with their fear constantly. So I'm just trying to think of an analogy. I quite like using the dentist analogy. So if you're in the waiting room to go to the dentist, and, you know, who wants to go to the dentist? It's pretty yucky, isn't it? So let's say you're in the waiting room, you feel horrible. You go into the dentist, you have a horrible experience, and he says, right, I want to see you again next week. So the next week you're sitting in the dentist's waiting area again, and you feel even worse than you did the week before because you had such a bad experience. So that's what happens when we let them bark it out. The dog gets more, and we see it get worse. So either the behaviour escalates or it starts earlier.